Within every human being burns a sacred fire. Most people live their entire lives unaware of this flame, unconscious of the divine spark that animates their existence. Yet throughout history, a brotherhood of initiated teachers has guarded this knowledge, preserving the methods by which this inner light can be awakened and cultivated. Manly P. Hall's The Initiates of the Flame draws back the veil on this ancient wisdom, revealing a unified spiritual science encoded with the symbols of Freemasonry, the mysteries of Egypt, the alchemy of the Rosicrucians, and the quest of the Grail Knights. The same fundamental truth appears across cultures and centuries, adapted to different languages and symbols, but pointing always toward the same reality: the transformation of consciousness through the mastery of one's lower nature and the awakening of spiritual potential. This video is brought to you by my Patreon. If you want to support this channel so I can continue to make videos like this, you can subscribe for just $5 per month and get videos a couple days early and ad-free. You can also become a member here on YouTube for just $5 per month and get videos early as well, but they won't be ad-free. The easiest way to support though, which costs you nothing, is just to like the video, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment about your thoughts after watching the video. I love reading what you all have to say. Thank you so much for the support from the bottom of my heart. Now let's begin. This flame represents far more than poetic imagery. It is the actual life force, the fragment of cosmic consciousness that connects humanity to the universal source. The eternal flame is the Spirit of God itself, manifesting as the spiritual sun behind our physical sun, and in humanity as the inner light that shines in darkness. It cannot be extinguished because it is life itself, and life cannot cease to be. The human body and consciousness serve as the altar upon which this flame must burn. Like burning incense, where tiny sparks slowly consume the offering, the spiritual fire within gradually transmutes base qualities into refined spiritual essence. This inner fire is the lamp of the philosopher. It dispels ignorance in proportion to its brightness. The greater the light, the further back the darkness is driven. Without this illumination, we cannot know where to go, cannot watch our footsteps, cannot transform ignorance into truth. Hall draws parallels between ancient civilizations and their spiritual decline to illustrate what happens when this connection weakens. Greece, Rome, and Egypt all perished spiritually when the light upon their altars grew dim through degeneracy, lust, passion, and fear. Mighty nations died, buried beneath the dead ashes of their own spiritual fire. When individuals or nations lose connection to this flame, they perish spiritually. When they nurture it, they flourish. We are heathens until baptized by the Holy Spirit, which is fire itself. The children of the flame are the sons of light, and this light is our fundamental nature waiting to be awakened. The spiritual development Hall describes is fundamentally alchemical. The quest for the Philosopher's Stone reveals itself as the search for spiritual perfection, the transmutation of the lead of ignorance into the gold of wisdom. The alchemist must perfect the marriage of the sun and moon, spirit and body, balancing masculine and feminine principles within. The rose cross of the Rosicrucians symbolizes this process. The rose of soul development blooming upon the cross of the physical body. True transmutation occurs not in external retorts, but within the laboratory of one's own being. The elixir of life is achieved through spiritual regeneration, and the stone of the wise is consciousness itself when perfected. This path requires mastery of the fourfold nature of humanity. Drawing from Egyptian and Masonic symbolism, Hall shows how the initiate must gain control over the four elements: earth, water, fire, and air, corresponding to the four bodies: physical, vital, emotional, and mental. Ancient mystery schools taught candidates to master their animal nature, symbolized by the Sphinx with its human head rising from an animal body. The initiate must pass this guardian of the threshold by conquering lower desires and elevating consciousness beyond bodily limitations. The process centers on purification and the transmutation of lower energies into higher spiritual forces. The initiate learns to raise spiritual currents from the lower centers of consciousness, symbolized by the sacrum bone and base of the spine, upward to feed the altar fire at the crown. When the lower emotions predominate, the altar flame burns low and flickers out. When altruism and higher aspirations dominate, these forces are lifted upward through purification, becoming fuel for the ever-burning lamp. This centering of thought and emotion determines where life energy is expended, on base desires or spiritual attainment. Masonic symbolism preserves these teachings. The apron represents the bodies that must be purified. The two pillars of the temple, Yahin and Boaz, represent the dual forces that must be balanced. The serpent wisdom teaches how spiritual energy must be raised through the spine to achieve illumination. The Masonic censer, working tools, and symbols of mortality all contain hidden spiritual meanings that modern practitioners may not fully recognize, but which the ancients encoded as markers on the path of initiation. Central to the initiate's journey is the concept of death and rebirth. In ancient mystery schools, including those within the Great Pyramid, candidates were placed in the stone coffer during initiation, buried and resurrected as symbols of the death of the lower nature and liberation of the higher self. This mirrors Masonic symbolism of the grave, coffin, and spade, representing the transformation that must occur. The sprig of acacia placed upon the coffin symbolizes the promise of immortality and spiritual resurrection. Even when life appears crystallized or dead, the divine spark remains, waiting to be rekindled. The Ark of the Covenant serves as a symbol of sanctified human consciousness. Within the Ark were kept the tablets of the law, representing divine wisdom. The rod that budded represented spiritual power, and the pot of manna representing spiritual nourishment. The initiate must become like the Ark, a vessel for divine presence. The priest before the Ark represents the purified consciousness approaching the divine within. The quest for the Holy Grail embodies the search for spiritual illumination and service. The Grail Knights, such as Parsifal, represent initiates who must prove themselves worthy through purity, devotion, and selfless service. The stone and sword symbolize strength and discrimination, tools the spiritual warrior must possess. The sacred spear represents directed will and purpose. True knighthood is spiritual, fighting not physical enemies, but inner demons of ignorance, selfishness, and materiality. Hall presents two distinct paths at the culmination of this teaching: the White Grail and the Black Grail. The White Grail is the path of service, self-sacrifice, purification, love, and study. The Black Grail is the path of prosperity at others' expense, selfishness, shortcuts, being mastered by appetite, and seeking comfort. The initiate must consciously choose which path to follow, recognizing that this choice determines the direction of spiritual evolution. This universal teaching has been preserved and transmitted through history by a brotherhood of enlightened beings. These initiates of the flame are purified souls who have renounced ordinary life to guard and protect the spiritual principle in humanity. They are the priests of ancient temples who still walk the earth as watchers and guardians. Through lives of self-sacrifice and service, they have labored for ages to help humanity kindle the divine spark within. Ages of study have revealed to them the mysteries it contains. Their seal, the seal of fire, marks the pages of history, though they remain largely unhonored and unsung. The great initiates of history carried this flame through different ages and cultures. Orpheus played upon the 7-string lyre of his own being, representing the music of the spheres. Hermes Trismegistus brought forth his emerald tablet of divine revelation. Krishna taught the mysteries of the soul on the battlefield of life. Buddha's yellow robe covered a heart of infinite compassion. Jesus bore a halo of golden flame and the calm of mastery upon his brow. Muhammad, Zoroaster, Confucius, Odin, and Moses all served as sons of the flame who guided humanity's spiritual evolution. These were not merely religious founders, but initiated beings who understood the universal mysteries. They established different paths suited to various cultures and times, but all pointed toward the same eternal truth, the awakening of the inner flame. Each adapted the teaching to their time and people, yet the essential wisdom remained constant across traditions. The Egyptian mysteries operated as schools of initiation where candidates learned to master the 4 elements and develop spiritual faculties. The priests held the staff and crook, representing will and compassion, wore the sacred scarab as a symbol of resurrection, and guided initiates through transformative experiences. The temples were not places of worship alone, but laboratories of consciousness where the divine flame could be awakened and cultivated. The Great Pyramid of Giza stands as the supreme temple of initiation. Hall argues it was built not as a tomb, but as a mystery school where candidates underwent profound spiritual transformation, built according to tradition by Atlanteans and teaching the mysteries of creation to those who could understand. Moses and possibly Jesus were initiated within its chambers. Its architecture encodes spiritual truths. The 4-sided base represents the 4 elements and 4 bodies of humanity. The 3 chambers correspond to the 3 divisions of human consciousness. The pit below ground, the queen's chamber at mid-level, and the king's chamber above relate to the generative forces, the heart, and the mind, respectively. The missing capstone represents the spirit in humanity that has fallen from its high position and must be restored. The stone coffer in the king's chamber was used for initiatory experiences of symbolic death and rebirth. The Sphinx stands as the guardian of the threshold, representing humanity itself with human consciousness rising from animal nature. An underground passage once connected the Sphinx to the pyramid, symbolizing that the gateway to spirit passes through the bodies. The structure continues its silent work, mutely teaching those who will see the mysteries of creation. A crucial distinction runs throughout this teaching. True initiation is internal transformation, not merely joining an organization. While mystery schools and secret societies preserve wisdom and provide frameworks for development, the real work occurs within individual consciousness. External organizations can guide, teach, and provide community, but they cannot do the work for the candidate. Each person must kindle their own flame, purify their own temple, raise their own consciousness. The symbols and rituals are tools pointing toward inner realities that must be personally experienced and lived. Initiates must take the tools of the craft and cut and polish their own being into the capstone of the universal temple. The thousands of workmen within oneself must be called together and bound to the service of the higher nature. This vision synthesizes symbolism from multiple traditions: Masonic, Egyptian, Christian, Rosicrucian, alchemical, Eastern, to describe a unified understanding of spiritual development. The teaching suggests that spiritual truth is universal and eternal, though expressed through different symbols and traditions across cultures and ages. What appears as separate religions and philosophies are different expressions of the same fundamental reality: the divine spark within humanity, seeking to awaken and return to its source. The pyramid's chambers remain open to those who would enter. The symbols of Freemasonry, the teachings of the Rosicrucians, the wisdom of ancient Egypt, the quest of the Grail Knights, all persist as traditions waiting to be understood and embodied. They have shown the way and led humanity to the gateway of the unknown. The responsibility now falls to each individual. We stand upon the shoulders of mighty teachers from the past. Our present civilization is built upon their wisdom and sacrifice. The flame they have protected and transmitted through ages of darkness and persecution is now our responsibility. The sacred fire burns on altars throughout the world, in temples and in human hearts, awaiting those who will recognize it. We must tend our own altar fires, perfect our own pyramids, and become guardians of the flame for future generations. The altar within requires constant tending. When lower emotions and base desires predominate, the flame dims and threatens to extinguish. When higher aspirations and altruistic service guide action, the fire burns bright and illuminates not only the individual consciousness, but radiates outward, touching others and contributing to the collective spiritual evolution of humanity. This is the work the Guardians have preserved, the practical methods by which consciousness can be elevated, the lower nature mastered, and the divine potential realized. Now each person must choose their path, the white grail or the black grail, service and purification or selfishness and comfort. The choice determines not only individual destiny, but the fate of the spiritual heritage these guardians have preserved. What emerges from this teaching is both a challenge and an invitation. The divine spark exists within every person, regardless of whether they acknowledge it. The path of purification and transmutation remains available to all who choose to walk it. The Brotherhood of Initiates continues its silent work, guiding and protecting humanity's spiritual evolution. But the choice to awaken, to kindle the flame, to transform lead into gold, this choice belongs to each individual alone. The responsibility this places on the individual is profound. We inherit not only the wisdom, but the duty to preserve and transmit it. Each person who awakens the inner flame becomes, in turn, a guardian for those who follow. The chain of transmission continues not through institutional authority, but through lived experience and embodied realization. The mysteries cannot be simply told or intellectually understood. They must be enacted in the crucible of one's own being. Thank you so much for joining me. Let me know in the comments what you think of the ideas Manly P. Hall lays out in the Initiates of the Flame. Do you agree? Does this text resonate with you? As I mentioned in the beginning, if you would like to support the channel, you can join my Patreon for just $5 per month and get early access to videos. For a one-time donation, there is a Ko-fi and PayPal link in the description and pinned in the comments. But the easiest way to support is just to like the video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss a future video. Check out my website oculus.com and the other history channel I narrate for called Folks of Yore. Again, thank you so much for watching. Until next time.